So Trump refuses to rule out summary execution. So Q sent this over to our group chat. So I'm going to make sure that you have plenty of time to share your thoughts and why you wanted to share this with the people. But we're going to share, as is often the case, an article that kind of paints the picture a little bit better. We're going to use an article that we don't normally use, and you may not have heard of it before, but we're going to give you the whole, because we have to do additional levels of research in order to bring you this content. So this comes from The Intercept, and we went behind the curtain. We could kind of tell, but just so we could deliver this to you, went behind the curtain to determine The Intercept's media bias. And so we'll go ahead, Q.
I just wanted to, because I don't want us to confuse people. Ramses meant we're using a source that we don't typically use, not an article that we don't typically use.
Okay, yeah, okay, thank you for that. Okay, so the bias rating is left. They have a score of 6.8. They're reported as being mostly factual at 2.4. If that doesn't mean anything to you, you're welcome to look this up yourself. They're based in the United States. Whether or not the source, the country of origin is free or like state controlled or whatever, it's listed as mostly free, being from the U.S. It's a website. It's not print or anything like that.
I bet that used to just say free instead of mostly free. I'm sure that's changed under this regime.
Yeah. I bet it did used to say free, but now it's mostly free. Very good. Traffic/popularity. It's high traffic website, and MBFC credibility rating is high credibility. So you now know what we know about The Intercept, as it's been determined to be highly credible and mostly factual. So I will now share the article with you. President Donald Trump has shattered the limits of executive authority by ordering the summary executions of individuals he deems members of designated terrorist organizations. He has also tested the bounds of his presidential powers by creating a secret list of domestic terrorist organizations established under National Security Presidential Memorandum 7, or NSPM 7. Are Americans that the federal government deemed to be members of domestic terrorist organizations subject to extrajudicial killings like those it claims are members of designated terrorist organizations? The White House, Justice Department, and Department of War have, for more than a month, failed to answer this question. Lawmakers and other government officials tell The Intercept that the pregnant silence by the Trump administration has become especially worrisome as the death toll mounts from attacks on alleged members of designated terrorist organizations in the Caribbean Sea and Pacific Ocean, and as Trump himself makes ever more unhinged threats to imprison or execute his political adversaries. Last month, members of Congress spoke up against Trump's increasingly authoritarian measures when a group of Democratic lawmakers posted a video on social media in which they reminded military personnel that they are required to disobey illegal orders. This led to a Trump tirade that made the White House's failure to dismiss the possibility of summary executions of Americans even more worrisome. Mark Kelly is at the center of this right here, because he was part of that video, and that's it. That's another story. We kind of touched on it, but if you've been following, that would make that live in your mind. I'll continue. Quote, "This is really bad," unquote, the president wrote on Truth Social. He goes on to write, "and dangerous to our country. Their words cannot be allowed to stand. Seditious behavior from traitors." This is all capitalized, by the way, with 3 exclamation points. "Lock them up, question mark, unquote." A follow-up post read, quote, "Seditious behavior," that is also in caps, "punishable by death." Death is in all caps with an exclamation point, unquote. Trump also reposted a comment that said, quote, "Hang them George Washington would," with 2 exclamation points. And that's the end of that quote. That was all capitalized as well. Here's another quote. "What's most telling is that the president considers it punishable by death for us to restate the law," unquote. The 6 lawmakers, Senators Elissa Slotkin, Mark Kelly, and Reps Jason Crow, Chris Deluzio, Maggie Goodlander, and Chrissy Holohan, all of them former members of the armed forces or the intelligence community, replied in a joint statement. Quote, "Every American must unite and condemn the president's calls for our murder and political violence," unquote. Trump later claimed he did not call for the lawmakers' executions. Again, I want to go back up and read his own words. Where did it go? follow-up post read, quote, seditious behavior, that's in all caps, punishable by death with an exclamation point. Death is in all caps, and that's the end of the quote. Okay, Q. This obviously stirred up some thoughts, and I know you wanted to share those thoughts with me and with our listeners. What say ye?
Before I respond, at some point before we get off the air today, I want us to run what people would consider a credible source or a more popular or well-known source through that same scrutiny so people can hear kind of what the baseline would be.
I'll get started on that right now. Go ahead.
But I want to pause on something important here, because some people would raise the question, why would anyone even care about these hypothetical concerns? Why is it such a big deal? And the answer is simple. Hypotheticals become very dangerous when you attach them to what has become a pattern. This administration has repeatedly demonstrated willingness to ignore norms. You and I talked about this recently with regards to what we do, not on air. So they've kind of right in our faces stretched authority and tested constitutional boundaries with impunity. And they seem like they'll just sort out the legality of their decisions later. But since no one's holding them accountable for it, they don't even have to do that. So when they refuse to rule something out, that refusal isn't happening in a vacuum, right? Like, we're not talking about something theoretical for a government with a pristine record that has shown restraint. We're talking about an administration that has already carried out lethal actions in open waters without public evidence, without judicial review, and without transparency about who and why they were targeting people, who those people were, what they say they did. No evidence at all, no transparency at all. And yes, those actions were justified under national security framework. But here's the problem. Once you flatly justify lethal force and make it normal without due process, just because it's happening abroad doesn't mean it could not reasonably start happening here. So when the White House is asked a very basic but serious question, hey, can you categorically rule out summary executions of U.S. citizens? And the answer is either silence or deflection. That's not reassurance. That is fuel. Refusing to rule out something is not a neutral position when power has already shown that it's comfortable operating in legal, let's say, gray areas. Using that context, ambiguity isn't caution. They're not being careful. That's leverage. They're trying to keep from putting their foot in their mouths. So let's be clear. A public discomfort isn't you being paranoid. This isn't hysteria. Yeah. It's pattern recognition. It's people connecting the dots between this grossly expanded executive power, blurred lines between war and policing, and a constant disregard for transparency, i.e., like I said, what's going on in and around Venezuela and right within our borders with ICE. So it'd be easy if this administration wanted these concerns to stop. The solution is not mocking the people who are asking the questions as dismissive hypotheticals. Do the one thing they keep refusing to do. Clearly state where the line is and then commit to never crossing that line.
Before we move on, I want to make sure that I share what this media bias fact check source that we use. So Fox News is considered between the right and the far right, or right and extreme. They are considered low in terms of factual reporting. They're considered low, not very low, because that's the lowest, but they're considered low. Mostly factuals in the center. They're considered, and then there's mixed, and then there's low, and then there's very low. They're considered low, so it's toward the bottom. Overall, we rate Fox News right right bias based on editorial positions that align with the right, and questionable due to the promotion of state propaganda, conspiracy theories, pseudoscience, etc. Low credibility. Country is mostly free. Again, USA. High traffic. Same things. They're there for you to see. And then I also looked at CNN just to make sure that we're keeping it the same. CNN is rated left center, mostly factual. The country, of course, USA, mostly free. CNN is medium credibility. So this website that we cited for the previous story is actually The Intercept, rather, is high credibility versus CNN's medium credibility and Fox News's low credibility. So there you go. All right.